Welcome to the Gus Alva Perspective, a videocast that is positioned in such a way as to promote a sense of gratitude and abundance over the mindset of fear and scarcity, which can cripple our lives. The topic that I'd like to touch on today is, I think, a very important and pertinent one, and that is, are you too lazy to think for yourself? Now, this may already sound a bit judicious as I make mention of this, but this term, too lazy to think for yourself, can apply in situations where individuals rely heavily on others to form their own opinions or to make decisions without engaging in critical thinking or independent evaluation of information. In the general public, this term might be used in multiple contexts. And what I want to do through this video cast is really examine those. But as I jumped on a plane recently, I could just see snippets of the news. And I was immediately struck by the fact that there is such a denigration of the information that is distilled to the general public nowadays that it becomes scary. And if people become hyper-focused on the very first point that I'm going to be touching on right now, you can really have a crippling effect on their lives. Let's take a look at the very first thing, that is media consumption. If people consume news or information solely from biased sources without cross-referencing or fact-checking, they may be accused of being too lazy to think for themselves. And ultimately, that happens all too commonly nowadays. Individuals might actually slant one way or another, but the only thing that they're willing to consume is information that is being taught to them or brought to them from whatever source it is that they feel most comfortable with, without necessarily cross-checking facts. Now, this ties into the next point, and that is echo chambers. Now, have you ever gone inside of a tunnel and just for fun said, echo, echo, echo? So when individuals surround themselves with like-minded people or social media bubbles, they might become insulated from diverse perspectives. This leads to a lack of independent thinking. And I see that on a daily basis. I'm oftentimes struck in wonderment over the fact that some people will just echo one thing without necessarily having a different reference point or perspective. This leads to another point, and that is blindly following authority. If people unquestioningly follow the directives of authority figures without examining the rationale or implications, they may be deemed as lacking critical thinking and being too lazy to think for themselves. And I think that does apply as well. In fact, one of the things that I actually admired in a particular individual that is noted in the social context was his unwillingness to simply follow blindly with the directives that he was being given and challenging status quo. Now, another important thing is accepting misinformation. When we believe and we share unverified or false information without verifying its authenticity or accuracy, well, that could certainly be labeled lazy thinking. Another point is over-reliance on others. So when individuals delegate their decision-making or personal choices to others without first considering their own values and interests, this term certainly might apply. We oftentimes see that with financial matters. Individuals will oftentimes relegate a lot of responsibility onto somebody else without first checking in on their credentials. Within the medical setting, I'll oftentimes tell other people, if you don't feel comfortable with the diagnoses that I am making for you right now, the recommendations that I am giving you, please, please, please get a second opinion, because it's important to empower individuals in an appropriate manner. And by the way, the last point that I'd like to touch on about potential lazy thinking is avoiding complex issues. If people avoid engaging in challenging discussions or examining complex issues in favor of simplistic or superficial solutions, they certainly could be criticized as being too lazy to think for themselves. And although it's important to note that utilizing this term that I initiated with might carry a judgmental connotation, please don't take it in that spirit. Our mindset of gratitude and abundance is one in which we should be considering underlying factors that influence other, other people's behaviors. And keep in mind that sometimes individuals might be hampered by time constraints, information overload, or a lack of access to diverse perspectives. And these might be some of the factors that we don't necessarily know about. But by encouraging critical thinking and fostering information literacy, as well as promoting open-mindedness, we then become conduits in helping individuals make informed decisions and form independent viewpoints, which is ultimately one of the things that elevates all of us within a society. And so, as a point of reference, anybody could be faulted for being too lazy to think for themselves. But it's critical that we understand the backdrop associated with where that judgment call might be coming from and the specific issues at play that might be leading towards that. So I thank you today for joining us on the Gus Alva Perspective on this interesting theme of, are you too lazy to think for yourself?